So this is for the people that have never been homeless, never lived in the Salvation Army, but are telling me that $600 a month is a good price in Victoria, BC for rent. Now, I don't know how these people can make that type of an assumption without even seeing what you're living in for $600 a month. They haven't even seen it. They have never seen it. First of all, the Salvation Army in Victoria is secured. You're not allowed to get in upstairs to see the dorms or the rooms, because if people could do that, then they would see how disgusting it is and what they're doing to human beings, okay? Humans are treated like cattle, like animals inside the Salvation Army. This is how it works. You go to the front desk, okay? They have a button that they press that unlocks a secure door if you have a bed, if you're a resident, and then you can get upstairs, and then there's 4 dorms, and there's probably more than 4 dorms now. I can't remember how many dorms there is, but when I was there was like 4 dorms, and there was like 30 beds per dorm, 30 men per dorm. They're bunk beds, okay? So you walk into a huge room, and there's bunk beds lined up right beside each other, all the way up the wall, all the way up this wall, all the way into the middle of the room, and then all the way around the perimeter of the room. Bunk beds, bunk beds, bunk beds, and then lockers. So you're living in a one big room on bunk beds, children's bunk beds, right? With 30 other men, okay? The showers are dirty, like they're gross. Like you wouldn't want to step in one of those showers. They're gross. They're like jail showers. You press a button and the water comes out for only like, a minute, and then it shuts off. You got to press the button again. Okay? It's like being in jail. It's degrading, it's belittling, it's the lowest quality of life that you can live just because we're homeless. And especially with the Salvation Army, that's literally, they have 147 beds now. So they charge you $600 a month to live in a dorm with 30 other men in bunk beds and with bed bugs. I was getting eaten alive by bed bugs, and I had no choice but to endure it because there's nowhere else to go except for outside. You know what I mean? And then to have a shower, I have to degrade myself, belittle myself. There's 3 showers in a row right beside each other. It's like jail. Would you feel comfortable showering in a setting like that? No. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health. And it's not good for your well-being in general. And people just expect homeless people to function after everything they've been through, and then they got to go through this on top of it. Just to get the basic needs from a shelter that generates over $88,000 a month. Okay, and charges the homeless $600 a month to live in one huge room with 30 other men. With jail showers all lined up beside each other. It's disgusting. There was bed bugs. What I figured out is that if I stayed in this homeless shelter in the Salvation Army in Victoria, BC, my quality of life, my mental health, my physical health, and my well-being would slowly continue to deteriorate. I would be forced into situations that were not good for me, or for my future, or for my stability, or for me trying to get out of my situation. All the odds were stacked up against me, every single way possible. And it was literally designed in a way that made things more difficult. The food was getting me sick. After a period of time of eating that food, I started getting really sick. And I was like, why am I getting so sick? Why am I having all these health problems and stomach problems and all this other stuff? And it was the food. And to this day, I'm still having health problems from that food that I ate. I might even have colon cancer. You know what I mean? So I don't know what they're putting in the food, but they're killing the homeless off. And there was something wrong with the food. It looked great. Like, it looked amazing. I was grateful. I was more than grateful. I was just like, I'm so grateful that this is here. You know what I mean? Because it might not be. You know what I mean? But it's a trick, man. It's a trap. You would only know if you went through the process. So you would never know. You think, oh, $600 is a great deal. What are you complaining about? Okay, all right. You go live in a room with 30 other men in bunk beds with bed bugs where you can't sleep and you can't even relax for a minute because somebody might steal something from you or stab you in your sleep or punch you in your face for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, somebody could cut off the lock on your locker and steal all your stuff. Like, you're never safe. You're never okay. You're never at peace ever. You're always worried. You're always stressed out. You always can't sleep because people are people are mentally ill in there, screaming in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. for no reason. People that go in and out, walking back and forth because they have schizophrenia, and they're like opening the door, shutting the open the door, shutting it, opening it, shutting it. You know what I mean? It's hell. You know what I mean? And it's not that the resources and the money isn't available to make the quality of life a little bit easier and better for the homeless people. It's that they intentionally starve and deprive the homeless and give them even less than the basic needs intentionally to keep them in a state of scarcity, so that way they can continue to generate that $100,000 a month. Not to mention everything else they're doing, the donations, the gifts they're getting, the donations, the fundraising, they get on the news, they do all this, and the news pushes their campaigns. They're making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. In Victoria alone, I looked up the charity data and the CRA data for every charity organization in Victoria that claims to relieve poverty for the homeless in Victoria, BC. Over $100 million a year, well over $100 million a year, these charities are generating, okay? And if you were to go into these shelters and try to get a meal or try to get a blanket or try to get a tent or a sleeping bag or anything, the food will get you sick. It's the lowest quality food. They don't pay for the food. They get it from the grocery stores that throw it out because they can't sell it past the expiry date anymore. It's illegal by the Food and Safety Health Act, right, in Canada. So they can't sell it, so they throw it out. But instead, the Salvation Army, our place, all these places collect all that donated food, so that way it cuts their food expense costs right out of the budget. So that's all profit margin now that they would have had to spend thousands, if not tens and thousands, maybe even millions, who knows, on food for the homeless when they just go get the expired food that gets thrown out in dumpsters, and then they feed it to the homeless. And then the homeless get sick because it's expired, and it gets them ill, it gives them colon cancer, all kinds of diseases. They become more sick, they become more dependent, more reliant on the system, more dependent on disability and your tax dollars. They stay stuck, and these charities sit there and say, see, there's a problem. We're going to need another $100 million this year. We're going to need to do another fundraiser and another one and another one. And literally, they give less than the bare minimum to the homeless, and they're pocketing astronomical amounts of money for themselves to keep their bloodline, their families, and their friends employed and rich, okay, year after year. Because if they solve the problem, there's no longer a need for a solution. If there's no need for a solution, then there's no longer a need for that $100 million per year demand, over $100 million a year demand of revenue that gets generated to solve the social issue called homelessness. I lived in the Salvation Army. I did 7 years in the streets in Victoria, BC, homeless, and I had to go into a tent, and then city bylaw came, found my tent when I tried to hide and stay out of plain view so that way I didn't get picked off, and they would still take my tent and all my clothes and all my documents in it, wrap it up in a ball and throw it in the garbage for it to get soaked and destroyed, so all my documents get destroyed. So now I don't have ID anymore, and this cycle continues over and over and keeps me trapped in a cycle of poverty and homelessness to the point where I accept defeat, I accept my circumstances, and I just say, you know what, this is life, the system is corrupt, it's intentionally keeping us oppressed and down and forcing us to stay homeless and giving us less than the bare minimum when there's way more than enough resource and revenue being generated around this. It's greed, it's corruption, and it's fraud that's causing the deprivation, depriving the homeless of what they need to prosper and evolve and prevail from homelessness or poverty. Now, I beat the odds. I spent 15 years in the streets homeless since I was 14 years old, from Hamilton, Ontario, still city tatted to my wrist. You know what I mean? I was a drug dealer. I was involved in gang activity. I've been in jail. I did it all. I lived at the Salvation Army. They were abusive to me. It was a dirty environment. I had to go outside. I got a tent to improve my quality of life so I could get a job. and then they threw my tent out, and I ended up stuck in a cycle of homelessness, and that's the city.